This is Empire Sports Alliance, Unfiltered. No fluff, no filters, just the real side of sports. We're talking athletes, coaches, agents, doctors, executives, the people behind the scenes who actually move the needle. From building careers to surviving the grind to winning off the field. This is where real conversations collide.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Empire Sports Alliance Unfiltered. I'm Ronnie, I'm the wealth guy, and we got Eric, my co-host.
Hey guys, I'm Eric, sports concierge for you.
And today we got Rick Pinkleton on, coaching, hockey, lacrosse, got a great military background. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So Rick, normally what we do is kind of like when we have individuals on, we kind of start with like the journey, talking a little bit in terms of like your career, obviously getting into coaching, but also from a military background. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks again for having me on. This is really awesome. Really happy to be a part of this. So for me, just a kid from Cleveland, Ohio, grew up there, had no direction on what I wanted to do. Thought I always wanted to join the military. My girlfriend at the time, my mom convinced her to have me go to college. So I tried it out. Wasn't for me. So chased her to college and ended up working out because we've been married for almost 20 years now. So that same girl from 16 is my wife to this day, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, I dropped out of college, had no idea what I wanted to do, no direction. Walked into the Air Force recruiting station, was like, hey, I want to join the Air Force because, who doesn't want to fly planes and do cool stuff like that, right? They asked me if I seen their website first. I was like, no, go home, check out our website, and come back and talk to us. I was like, got it. Made a U-turn right into the Navy office, said, hey, I want to join the Navy. And they're like, we got a job for you, bud. And
they didn't ask you for a website if you checked on that one?
No, they were hurting. So they were like, oh, yeah, wait, hold on. You graduated high school? Yes.
There you
good.
go.
My PT scores were pretty high. Ended up talking to the special warfare recruiter. He started going down the list. He's like, so I heard you want to be a Navy SEAL. I was like, yeah, no, not really for me. Then he's like, well, what about EOD? I was like, well, what's that? He said the word explosive. And I was like, I'm going to stop you right there. We'll move on to the next one. And then he's like, well, what about SWIC? I was like, well, what's that? And he's just like, oh, those guys that get on the really cool fast boats and are, running a gun and stuff. I was like, okay, that seems pretty cool. Not really where I want. And then he said, well, what about diver? I was like, tell me about that one. And I started going on the list. I was like, sign me up right now. He's like, well, you got to pass like the special warfare, entrance physical exam. It's called a PST. And I was just like, all right, well, let's go do it. He's like, what, right now? I was like, yeah, take me right now. I'll go pass it. So he did. He took
right
me
at
to
the first interview. Wow.
What's that?
Right after the first interview.
Oh, right away, right after the first interview.
All right.
And so he's like, all right, put your money where your mouth is. Took me to the local YMCA. I passed it. I wouldn't say I smoked it, but I passed it. And he's like, all right.
Entail?
What's that?
What did it entail? What did you have to do for it?
You start off with a 500-meter swim.
Okay.
And it has to be either breaststroke or what we call the combat stroke. It's a side stroke, which I had no idea how to really do. So I kind of fumbled my way through that. And then after that, you have a certain amount of rest time. And then you do push-ups, sit-ups, 6 pull-ups, all timed. And then you do a 1.5 mile run. And what a lot of people don't understand is like once you finish that swim and you're like trying to smoke through it, which of course, yeah, just go. And not taking your time at all and pacing yourself, you're smoked for the rest of it. So, but I was like, nah, I'm not going to not pass this. So did that. And then, yeah, I signed my diver contract that day. So then
real quick. So the first question they ask you in the interview is like, oh, so you want to be a Navy SEAL? That was the first one?
Yeah. Well, so the guy that recruited me for special warfare he was the Ohio regional special warfare guy. His name was Mike Noss. No, I don't know anybody with the name Mike Noss that already shouldn't just be a certified badass.
Yeah.
And this dude was, I don't know, he had to be in his mid 50s at the time, just cock diesel, just super in shape older guy. And here I am 20 years old and probably had a little bit of an attitude who didn't at 20. And this guy would have killed me with his pinky. He was the coolest, nicest guy. So he was a SEAL officer before he retired. And funny story is my first command was SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2, which is the command he retired from.
Oh, no.
So it's kind of like, it was pretty cool that ended up working out like that.
Wait, why are they going to Cleveland to get people to join the Navy? Do they even swim in Cleveland?
Well, here's the cool thing about diving. I'm not very good swimmer, but I'm really good at sinking. So
Okay, yeah, there you go. That's good.
it worked out well. No, there's Navy recruiting offices. I mean, Army, all that stuff in every state, stuff like that. But funny is like I get out into the Navy, like think I'm gonna meet all these people, and like seriously, like, half the people are from Ohio, and I'm like, man, everybody just wanted to get into that state.
Right. So now you decide, so you passed the test, you decided to go like the diving route. What was next?
So after that, you kind of go through the DEP program, which is kind of like just checking in with the recruiting office until you ship out to boot camp. Headed out to boot camp out of Great Lake, Chicago. From there, went into what they call dive prep, which is at that time was kind of like the Wild West, where they literally just beat the crap out of you every day for like 3 months straight until people quit, and to see if you can make it down.
Can you walk us through a day? What does a day look like?
Sure. Freezing cold because my travel agent really sucks. So I decided to go to Great Lake, Chicago in January, graduate boot camp in March, and then do pre-dive school from March. So I believe it was end of April was when I was there. And so we were right there in Chicago, North Chicago, snow coming down, stuff like that. And it was just like, okay, 05 in the morning, muster up. So we're all freezing, huddling together with snow coming down. All right, let's go for a run. And we just took off running. And then we go trail runs. They'd stop us, beat us with like, carrying logs or push-ups or running through mud that's like saturated with snow. And honestly, it was a blast. It was just go out, work out, go for runs. And then from there, it's like, okay, time to go to the pool. And then just get our asses beat in the pool for all day. And then we'd finish up around 3:00 in the afternoon.
What year was this?
2007.
Okay.
Yeah. 2007 is when I joined.
You mentioned a couple of times, I'm like, back then, is it different today from a training perspective?
It's a lot more, I would say, right. Because before we were, so before you have to have what they call a source rate. So it's like, you would have to be like an engineer or, a cook or whatever rate in the Navy, ET, like electrician's mate type thing. And then you can go one of these special routes after you went through like a source rating. I was one of the first classes, not the first, but they've already been doing it for, I don't know, maybe a little less than a year, where ND, so Navy diver, was an actual rate. So you can join the Navy as a diver and not have to go through anything extra or go to a ship or a submarine or anything like that beforehand for a couple of years before you can even go down the special warfare pipeline. You can go straight into it. So I was one of the, so they were still trying to figure all their stuff out. Like, how do we make this an actual course pipeline, stuff like that. So it was a lot of trial and error at that time. So now it's been around over 20 years. So they got to have their stuff on lock, and you learn a lot of things, science advances and stuff like that on how to work out properly. So like, at the dive school, they have like a whole like CrossFit center and stuff. I mean, it's pretty in depth now. They have nutritionists on board and stuff like that to help out, because you're working out and beating your body down so much, like proper nutrition, all this other stuff. So it's come a long way. So it's
You
pretty.
didn't have that in 07, right? They didn't do that. There was no nutritionist.
No, we stocked up on hard-boiled eggs and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and stuff like that from the galley, and just shoved whatever food they put in front of us as much as we could.
So now, as you're going through training, how long does the training last, the total of it?
So like, for instance, I started boot camp in January of 2007, and then I finished up dive school, which is in Panama City, Florida. It was August 28th of 2007. Roughly 8 months from start of boot camp to completion of dive school. And then I checked into my SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2, my first duty station in September of 2007.
So can you?
What was dive school like? Because I have my advanced cert. So are you doing more deep dives? Is it more search and rescue? Recovery?
No, that's a great question. So dive school kind of is encompassing kind of getting used to all the different diving rigs. So surf supplied hard hat diving, we consider ourselves the salvage experts at that time. So like you said, recovery, you have You do the scuba portion. We'll do a lot of the work we do nowadays is the best way to describe us is like underwater mechanics. So a lot of us is ship's husbandry work. So anything that we can fix underwater, waterborne to get the ships and stuff like that back out, we'll do. So, you do a little bit of projects like that. They introduce like cutting and welding and stuff like that, but that's so few and far between. Like everybody, oh, so do you weld underwater? I don't think I've done, we've done some practicals and stuff just to, I guess keep proficiencies, but I'm not welding anything anytime soon. But
So you're only really going down what, 40, 50
yes,
feet?
on average, yes. But at like a MUDSU command, so a mobile diving salvage unit that's attached to EOD platoons, you work hand in hand with EOD and stuff like that. Those are salvage type commands. So we're doing dives on mixed gas upwards to 300 feet. So you're averaging between 200 to 300 feet on certain, whatever you're doing. It could be shallower, whatever. They also incorporate what they call anti-terrorism force protection dives, which is doing pier and pylon searches and stuff like that for anything that can go boom, so we can protect our assets that are pulling into ports and stuff like that.
So, okay, you bring that up. Obviously, we're in a war right now, let's say.
Sure.
And there are landmines in the Strait of Hormuz right now. So would they send someone like you to try to find them and defuse them, or no?
So not in the straits like that, and I can't really speak too intelligently on that because I haven't really gotten to work on that myself. But the technology we have to go and find a lot of those things is you're not sending out someone like me to go. We're already in a port that we may have an asset coming to. So we're going to go and dive the piers that they're going to pull into because they've already made it through all that stuff. So that's a great question, but no, not really up our alley for right now. Now, could that be something that if things escalate or something like that, sure, maybe. But those are going to be more of the EOD techs that are going to go out there and do that, not necessarily divers. We may be incorporated with them, but that's more of their specialty at that point.
Got it. All right. All right. So then you get through boot camp, and then are you like, at one point were you like, what the fuck did I do?
100%. Absolutely. I think it was day 2 of boot camp. And I was like, what was I thinking? This was stupid. But you kind of, once you start getting into the routine, and you get through it, like, then we kind of just made a game of it. You know what I mean? It was just, and you start building that camaraderie with some of the guys. You kind of start having fun with it. And before you know it, 8 weeks flies by at like in a flip of an instant. You're like, holy crap, we're done. All right, on to the next one. And then, for me, it started becoming a pride thing where it's just like, I'm not quitting. Like, no. To go back to what? For me, I had nothing to go back to. What, I'm going to go back and live with my parents? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, that's not what I wanted. I wanted something more. So, and I set myself up saying I can make it through this pipeline and get into, the top, what they call the top 1% of the Navy. And I'm not quitting. You're going to have to kick me out or force me. There's nothing you're going to make me do to quit. And I had a great mentor told me, he's like, listen, at the end of the day, it's a Navy course. Like, so just get through the day. Don't worry. Don't look into the future and so on. Just get through the day. You get through the day, then tomorrow's a whole new day. And it sounds a little cliche, but it's true. That day may suck, but there's always another day. So go ahead.
I was going to say, so once you got through it and graduated, was it like, oh man, this is a breeze now? Like, was it that much harder going through everything through August, basically? And then it just kind of, okay, now it's real day-to-day stuff.
You would think that. Honestly, I think it only gets a little bit, it teaches you more so, okay, you got through the easy portion. Now, like, we're setting you up for all the challenges that you're going to meet coming in the coming days and tours and stuff like that you hit. And I think for me, at least personally, it got harder the more you advance in rank. So because now, not only do you have the work, but now you're in charge of personnel. And, anytime you breathe compressed gas underwater, someone's life is in, it's a dangerous, job to do regardless. If you're even just scuba diving for fun, like you're breathing compressed gas, something could go wrong. And in our case, it's in the supervisor's hands. So when I became a diving supervisor, now it's just like shit can go wrong. And if it goes wrong, it's my fault. you take that very seriously. So that the stress that comes on with that, I think, even in my opinion, the higher you get up and the more people you're accountable for is almost more stressful than I would go back to dive school in a heartbeat and just be a student again. I had no responsibility whatsoever other than wake up and get my ass kicked every day, and study for the exams. Other than that, I mean, it was cake. But yeah, I think it just kind of sets you up for the more difficult comings that are going to be ahead of you.
Okay.
You mentioned, camaraderie a couple of times. And obviously, in terms of like, as we're going to go into more, of a sports talk as well, like when did that kick in? How many people were there around you? How big was your group? And, when did you kind of realize looked around, I'm like, hey, we're all in this together kind of thing. And how did that
Yeah,
feel?
so in pre-dive school, we had, I think it was something like 45
45?
in our pre-dive. So after we graduated boot camp, we were all together. We had like 45 of us. And honestly, from almost day one, we were like, listen, we're not going to let each other quit. We're in this to win it. We left pre-dive school, went to dive school, I think with only 30 after rolls, someone could get hurt, something like that.
Yeah.
Rollbacks, injuries, and people that just are like, nah, screw this, I'm done. And then from there, we picked up some of the roles from previous dive school classes. So I think we had like somewhere between 35 and 40, and we only graduated with 17. You do, you can.
Oh, that's 50%. All right. Well, that's okay.
Yeah. Again, like I'd say 40% of that 50, was rolls because of like you said, you're doing dangerous stuff every day. You're diving. So like,
Yeah.
or you can get sick, and you can have ear issues. And so you just get rolled back to another class. So a lot of them were just rolled to another class and ended up making it through eventually. But yeah, I mean, I think we only had 5 or 7 like legit quit once you're down in dive school, and the rest of them were like rolled. And if you get rolled too many times, then there's like, you're going to have to go. So there was a few of those and stuff like that. But, between actual like failures and quits, I think there was only maybe about 5 or 7.
Now, are they putting you in dry suits or are they making you suffer and you're in a wetsuit?
Well, it's in Panama City, Florida, so there's not a whole lot of suffering, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
So, and then again, when you're like in the winter, like for up here, right? When we're diving up in New England, yeah, we're just driving a wetsuit, but we got hot water hoses and hot water heaters coming down to our suits. So it's cold, but it's not unbearable. And then if you're doing something like an ice diving or something like that, then yes, we're running a full dry suit.
Yeah, I mean, I surfed California.
That water's cool.
So you're taking
That's
a
not warm.
suit. That's how we were warming up.
Yeah. So I mean, you throw on a 7 mil wetsuit, it's not too bad and stuff like that. And like I said, you add some hot water to it, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
What was the coldest you ever had to dive into?
So I guess one of my only real claim to fame, if you will, is I got to supervise and also do a dive. We were doing training dives in Utah, and we were at almost 10,000 feet of altitude under roughly 3 feet of ice. That was cool. But we were geared up for ice diving, and it was workup training stuff, but it was a blast. Diving under ice was pretty much one of the coolest things that I've gotten to do as a diver in my career. There's nothing like it, really. And I'm glad I got to experience it. But part of the training portion is take off your mask, and so your face freezes, and put your regulator in, and then go on your secondary source. And so you can experience that. So God forbid something happens, you have to switch secondary. It's not a shock factor, right? So, but that was pretty cool. And yes, that was really cold.
What's the hairiest situation you've been in?
Man, that's a good question. Man, maybe not the hairiest, but it was pretty wild. We were doing training dives to 300 feet off one of the coastlines, and just to certified rebreather rigs, so we can get certified to go dive them and go out and do what we're supposed to do. And I was one of the safety divers because I've dove it quite a bit. And we were coming up, and my buddy, I'm tracking their rigs, and everything was going great. And we were ascending, and we're hitting our decompression stops. And I look over, I was checking their guys' secondary displays, their electronic, making sure everything's working properly. Everything was good. And I look up my buddy, and through his face mask, his eyes are like this. And I'm like, dude, are you okay? And he's just like, and just screaming through. I'm like, what? I turn around, and there's this like 10-foot bull shark circling. And I'm like, oh, but you can't do anything. It's not like you can shoot to the surface or you're screwed.
No,
you know,
because at 300 feet, where is your safety dive? or the
Well, it all
safeties?
depends on the table. So the Navy has Navy dive tables. So depending on what rig and what gas you're breathing, we have set tables for. So like, okay, if you're at this depth for this long, this is what your decompression is going to be on the way up. Right. So we have already pre-planned all that. So we were already coming up on decompression stops. So I don't know, may have been 60, 50 feet in the water column or something like that. And when we saw that, and it was like, well, and then by the time we hit, I think about 30 feet, the small boat that we're diving off of started revving its engines and it kind of chased it off. And they're like, all right, who's ready for the next dive? I was like, yeah, no. So that was pretty cool. But that was also like one of those pucker moments where you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So
Again, there's nothing you can do, right? Really?
no, I mean, again, you're in their environment. So if you're just calming, I think it was more so, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is we were diving rebreathers. So there's no bubbles coming out, which honestly, the bubbles help because it kind of usually scares them away a little bit. But in this case, you know, we're just wearing, you know, wetsuits and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, we just look like giant seals. So we look
That's
like
not how you want to look like in front of a shark.
Yeah, that's not what you want to look like in that situation. So, but
I mean, I was always caught hidden in its nose. It's the most sensitive area, but I mean,
we would have went down swinging for sure. I don't know how well that would have worked out for us, but yeah.
right.
There's always a moment in the show, Rick, where Eric is being a smartass. This was one. Like,
I mean, I've heard the same thing. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I mean,
you gotta come
your
up with
guess is as
something.
good as
Yeah.
mine at
No,
this.
I'm not making it up, Ronnie.
Well, you will never, as deep as I'm going to go is the swimming pool. That's about it. So there's no sharks down there. But so now you've gone through, again, training, you have experienced these type of things. So, you know, obviously there's a certain mentality, certain thing you built. Now, how does that translate into the lacrosse hockey culture and coaching in itself? Like, you know, it's a military training, then going into sports.
Well, so the cool thing is that I never imagined myself coaching, to be perfectly honest. I put away my hockey stuff. So I only played high school hockey. We weren't great. And then I was going to try to play club in college. I just was not good enough. So I played some men's league when me and my wife moved out to Virginia Beach and had fun. Like, it was kind of like we had a spec war team made up. So it was like a bunch of like SEALs, divers, EOD, playing on a team together. It was a blast in the men's beer league. So we were having a good time. But then, you know, I had my daughter and I kind of hung up the skates, stuff like that, and to never be seen again. And honestly, I stopped watching hockey and stuff like that. And then my son was born. I was out on a TAD trip or something like that. I wanted him to play football. Like, I didn't even want him to play hockey. And my wife sends me this video. We still have it to this day, where it was he was on the chair. My wife's like, hey, we can sign you up for flag football this spring. He's like, I don't want to play football. I want to play hockey. And she's just like, never talked about it. We didn't watch it. I don't know where it came from. And he's like, cuz I just want to play hockey. So I was like, all right, I'll take care of this. Brought him, got home, went to Play It Again Sports, something like that, dressed him head to toe in hockey gear for like $100. Took him to an open skate. My wife's like, aren't you going to win one of those little pusher things? Like, yeah, I wanted to hate this. And so he went out there and just boom, boom, boom. And for like an hour and a half, wouldn't get off. I was like, there's no way. Oh, I'm like, all right, buddy, what do you want to do? He's like, I want to play hockey. I was like, shit. So I did. I signed him up that day. And he started going through like the training stuff like that. The coach, his coach at the time came up to me and asked me, he's like, hey, I heard you played. And I was like, I mean, kind of. He's like, well, would you mind come out? We always need help. Would you want to come out and help? I was like, you know what? Yeah, that'd be fun. Cool. Let's do it. I get to spend more time with my son. That's all that matters. And I did it. And I kind of just really started falling in love with it. And then, of course, you know, just like any of us think like, well, I could do this better than the other guy. So now I'm going to be the head coach. And then we started getting into the COVID time. And I really thought the organization that we were with at the time was like really screwing over the kids. That did not sit well with me at all. Like, you know, trying to up the costs to cover their COVID bills. And it was just like, it just kept increasing. And it was like, oh, now we want 6-year-olds to sign this contract to say that, okay, you owe us this money, but if it gets canceled because of COVID, that's not our problem. I was like, no, look, what? There was only one other rink in town. I got a hold of the owner. His name was Rich Appleby. And I'll say his name because this is one of the most fantastic human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And it kind of ties in with this whole military thing too.
Yeah.
So I got on the phone with Rich and he's just like, well, how many kids do you plan on bringing over? I was like, well, I think 15 kids and who else knows to follow us? He's like, well, bring them out and you watch me coach, watch me with my kids on the ice. Was like, man, you got some really good skaters. And he's like, well, we don't have a travel program here. And I was coaching a travel team at the time, like introducing these kids to travel hockey. And I was like, all right, well, how do we make this work? And he really worked with me and we split up all the kids equally amongst his town league, his rec league to help develop the other kids. And then gave me separate practices to go take these kids to like, tournaments, little showcases and stuff like that. So we can still have that team. And it just blew up. I ended up becoming the Mike director of hockey and then the assistant director for the entire program. They were partnered with the Warrior for Life Foundation. So I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but it's a phenomenal foundation. They do a lot of like cognitive stuff and stuff like that. And they actually just partner with the NHL. So like they're embedded. They love how the hockey side of things correlates so well to like all of the inner workings of like the spec war programs and stuff like that, the leadership and everything like that, and how it all ties together. Our like jersey logo, the Warrior for Life logo, 2 tridents, it was a hockey stick and a tri. It was the coolest freaking jersey ever. And we just took off. So what was just a town league program is now, right now to this day, one of the best AA programs on the East Coast.
That's awesome.
To help start that. And then it just kind of drove me from there. And then we moved up to Connecticut and I'm like, cool, I don't have to do this coaching and anything anymore. And then my son played for MassCon up here. His coach was a guy named Tom May and awesome guy. Loved what he was doing. He came up to me after the season, was just like, do you want to coach with me next year? I was like, no. Didn't stay away. So I ended up doing it. Tom to this day is one of my best friends. And then I moved him down to another program, didn't really like what they were doing. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start coaching even more. And I got even more involved. And then it just kind of blew up. And then, I got to go coach a Pee Wee Quebec team, which was a phenomenal. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that or looked up the Pee Wee Quebec tournament. It is an incredible tournament for youth hockey players. My son got to be a part of that. I got to actually coach his team, which was even cooler.
Rick, when you say youth, just for the audience, in terms of like what age group are you talking?
So when I'm talking about youth, I'm more so talking about Pee Wee and under. I think once you get into the Bantam levels, which is 13U and up,
13,
it's still youth hockey, but you can't. That's when you're really separating, the men from the boys at that point.
Yeah.
And the girls that were just doing it for fun and these very young, talented women that are just out there crushing it and even playing on these boys team. I had a 13U female player on my team last year, was one of the scrappiest. She was, I always told her, you're my spirit animal. Like this girl was just brutal on the ice. And it was so much, and she was not big at all. She maybe was like 5'1", if that, but just would crush boys' souls. And it was the coolest thing to watch.
Now, the reason I was asking also from a youth perspective, I know Eric and I had a recent meeting with somebody on the baseball side mentioning how they're scouting, like, even internationally, like, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. So, at that level, it kind of like starts already. It might be very young, but to your point, I think
they do these showcases and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And this is what's crazy. And I'm not going to lie. I got caught up into it too when my kid was younger. It was like, all right, how many of these, because it almost became a thing where spring hockey is now more important than fall hockey. Like, so it's about you got to think about it. What spring team are you on? Because now all these top level kids, if you're playing in these quote unquote elite divisions, you got all the best kids all around the country playing on teams together and going to the same tournament to play. Well, you just took all the guesswork out of everything. So what does it matter where you're playing at in the fall really anymore if you're on one of these spring teams? And so that's why spring hockey, I think, exploded. But I also think there's so many money grabs out there. And you got to be very, very careful on who you're signing up with. And I don't care what sport it is.
Yeah.
Because you can get into these, different leagues and companies and stuff like that where they're just throwing kids out on the ice and taking tens of thousands of dollars. And you don't know who the coach is. They're not showing up. Like, you're promised this like AAA experience. And it's like you're on a rec league team. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like,
I know for baseball, these kids do all these travel teams. They got practice all the time, obviously year round. And then they'll do tournaments where they could play 2 or 3 games a day. And it's
Yep.
like, they don't need this. They got open growth plates. They're young. They got hormones. This is why they all get injured and why the majority of kids just throw in the towel in the ring by the time it's, to go to college because they're burned out and overuse and done.
So I'll say this about that. I think that's a good point, but I think it can go in 2 different directions here. One of them is that I think it starts with the parents, and they always think like little Timmy or little Johnny is the greatest thing to God's green earth. Great, as you should, you're their parent. But you also got to be able to understand that it's okay to play double A. It's okay to play single A, right? Like, for instance, in Connecticut, there are like 35 AAA travel teams. No, there's not. No, there's not. You can call yourself AAA all day you want. You're not. You're not that at all. Some of these teams are AA at best, but the teams that stay true to their identity and shoot, now I've just lost my track, not the leagues, but the organizations that stay true to their identity of like, no, we are a very good AA or single A organization, and that's what we're going to be, and that's how we're going to foster these kids. And they actually develop even better because a lot of these quote unquote elite groups, they stop developing. And they expect you to go out there and get all the development on your own to be a part of this team. And all they're doing is they're running them like NHL or MLB teams where now the development is taken out of the equation. And you're taking a bunch of kids with a ton of talent. But that's also why those kids fizzle out at the end too, and they don't make it, is because they lack the development throughout the years. And
you got to maintain fun. Kids have to still have fun and love the game.
Right. And I think there's a fine line there, right? So, and I'll equate it to my son, right? He plays at a pretty high level. For
How old
instance,
is he now? Sorry.
he's 13.
Okay.
He's 13, but here's the thing. When we were in Virginia Beach and he was starting off, we played single A and we developed. Then he started playing double A. And then now he's moving to Michigan to go play for a tier 1 hockey team out in Michigan, right? And we're kind of working how we're going to retire and what we're going to do to move around that, because my daughter's graduating high school. She's going on to college because he has a dream. So for me, and I know what the numbers are and the percentages and stuff. I'm not sitting here telling you my kid's going to make it to the NHL, because I'm not. But what I am going to say is that where do we also stop letting these kids chase their dreams? So for me, it's also to the point of where at the end of the day, if he's done everything in his power to where I instill work ethic and like, hey, if you want this is the steps you have to take and some of the sacrifices you have to do to reach your goal. And he doesn't get there, but he's taken his right steps and he's done what, he thinks he's maxed out to his ability, then he's not going to have any regrets at the end of the day. I don't want him to go when it's all said and done and he's looking back, man, what if? That is the worst thing in the world to me, is when you can look back and say, man, what if I would have just done this? Or what if I would have just done that? Could I have made it a step further? So, but we also present it to him. And sometimes that's hard. Like, well, obviously there's guidance involved. You still got a parent, but it came down to this. It's like, you've had to move around a little bit for the military already. We told you we weren't going to move anymore. So what do you want? You have a great group of friends here. We don't want to take you away from that, but you have this opportunity. So here are the pros and cons of each, right? And what decision do you want to make? So ultimately, at the end of the day, we kind of left it down to him. Like, he thought about it and stuff like that. And he's like, I really want to try this out. But we also made sure he understood, like, if you commit, you're going to commit. And if you don't, at the end of that commitment, it's not for you. That's okay. Like, and that's the other thing. You got to let him know, like, it's okay to, cool. If this isn't for you, fine. Like for my daughter, she was a pretty high level tennis player, and the mental aspect of a single sport like tennis, golf, like it's tough. And I remember the one day she teenage daughter texted me, "Dad, can you come up and talk to me?" I'm like, shit. All sorts of crazy shit going through my mind. And I'm like, oh my God.
19-year-old daughter. I get it.
Dude, I was freaking out. So I got up there. I was like, she's like, I need to talk to you. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, I want to quit tennis. I was like, oh, thank God. But like for me, it was like, all right,
Right.
that's fine. But what's your plan? Like, what do you want to do? And, the fact that she can come to me and have that conversation meant more to me than anything else. It meant more than the tennis or anything like that. But it's like, okay, like you're not just going to not do anything. So what do you want to do? She's like, well, there's a co-op to where my school's going to have a lacrosse team. And that's what I want to go do. Perfect. So, and she took off to the race, and now she's a top player on the varsity team for the academy she plays for. And she's a junior going in, which would be next year will be her senior year. And, I could be more proud. And the other thing with the burnout factor that you were talking to, Eric, was that, in my opinion, too many people try to specialize in their sport at like 6 years old. Why? Like to this day, like last year, I mean, granted, I understand time and stuff like that. And for parents, and it can get very tough, especially if you're in a travel aspect. I mean, me and my wife, we just kind of suck it up and do it because we love it to do it with them and go through this ride with them. But last year, my daughter was in lacrosse. Logan, my son, was just starting hockey season, decided he wanted to play football with his buddies that year. And now we're in lacrosse again. So it's like, but those are muscle groups that your body needs to grow as a growing athlete and child. And when you specialize, that's where more of those injuries come from. I don't necessarily think it's from, because he plays hockey all year round, but I'm like, you're going to do something. I don't care if it's like, you want to go out and just go play golf, or if you want to go rock climbing, you're going to do something to work those other muscles out.
We had several conversations, right, Eric, with, pro athletes that said all the same thing in terms of, hey, I benefited greatly from trying different sports, not just, honing in on one particular sport early on. So, but you were going to say something else, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important because you don't want the same muscle memory going one direction. You want the multi-directional stuff from multi-sports. But also going back to your son on making that decision and him saying, okay, I want to do this. So I would treat a number of high school kids and I'm like, what are your goals? And if a lot of them said, I just want to play through high school, or I want to try to play in college. And then obviously a bunch said, I want to go pro. And it's like, great. What's going to make you different than the other couple thousand kids? Oh, yes. I have a big heart and I really try. Yeah, big deal. They all do. What else? Well, I put in extra time. All right, so what? So did the other couple thousand kids, And I try to teach them, you have to understand recovery. It's not all about the training. It's how is your body going to recover? Are you doing the foam rolling? What is your nutrition? What are you taking into consideration from a mental standpoint also? And if you're able to go to a coach and say, yeah, I did all this training and put in the extra time, but I watch what I eat. I get the proper protein and I do this and I do that. Now you will stand out compared to someone else. But
yeah, well,
create.
And I think my kids got a little spoiled and lucky because it comes down also to the discipline aspect. So like for right now, I don't know many 13-year-olds that are waking me up out of bed at 5:30 in the morning to take them to the gym with them and go work out. So my son sets his alarm, does that, wakes up. And I remember the one morning I woke up, we did that, got into the gym, and my daughter was already in there working out. And I was like, what is happening? So my wife's also a personal trainer.
That helps.
So that helps. And then, but I told him, I was like, you got to be disciplined in what you do. So if you don't have enough discipline to appreciate your craft, then you're never going to reach your goals that you want. And then, so with that aspect, like, he does that, like you said, but it's also teaching them, like you said, the right nutrition factor of it. And, and I hate when kids start throwing around the word like diet and stuff like that. It's like, no, you have to, and it's not about counting your, you just got to make sure you're eating properly, and you're not just eating a bunch of junk left and right, but like that stuff's okay in moderation because you can't just,
enjoy life at the same time. You're a kid.
Yes.
Yeah. On the pro level, you have people that talk about the cheat meals, right? We had a few conversations.
You still got to do it.
Well.
We still like pizza on Friday nights, and we're going to do it because I like pizza. Yeah. So,
you'll just run 2 extra miles the next morning on Saturday mornings at 5 o'clock instead of 5:30. I get it. But could you talk a little bit more in terms of like development, obviously besides nutrition and just, muscle or growth, et cetera, but leadership, character building, right? Going through toughness, adversity, especially with your background from a military perspective. How do you apply that with coaching? What do you see today with, again, working with 13-year-olds? And how do you
Yeah,
overcome it?
so I mean, so you can't coach a 6U team like you're coaching a 10U team, like you're coaching a 13U team, and so forth,
Yep.
right? So you got to have to be able to adjust your leadership styles, and you got to understand who your audience is. So I always took it from an aspect of like, okay, and one thing that I've always made sure I did is if I was having a rough day, then maybe I'd have, and I knew I was going to have the right mindset going out onto the ice with the kid, then maybe I'll let my assistant coach start the practice or something like that. Kids can read bullshit a mile away. So if you're showing up and you're just like, all right, guys, let's go do this or let's go do that, then they're like, then why the hell should I be here if he doesn't even want to be here? Now, Grant, I don't think I really ever had one of those days because I could have the worst day in the world, and as soon as I step out on the ice with those kids, especially with mine, and my day immediately gets better. So, I genuinely loved and enjoyed being there, and I think the kids really always fed off that. And I was always told I was a very passionate coach because I would get just as great. Like you'll see like me jumping off a bench, like, celebrating a goal just as much as they are because I'm stoked, or they just made a set up a play that we've been practicing and practicing. They weren't quite getting it, but then executed it. And so it's like, oh my God, they actually do get it. And I think there's a time and place to quote unquote getting the kids' asses about certain things, right? When they're not listening and getting them in line, that's put down the hammer a little bit and stuff like that. But you also got to be able to roll it back and be able to explain things to them at their level. And you can't just sit here and scream shit out all the time, or you're not going to learn anything. So, and what I would do with now, like with some of my 13U teams and stuff like that, I take them on a military day. So before the season even starts, I would bring them out to the base, and it was my boot camp day. And I'm like, you're mine. And I would literally beat the shit out of them from like 8 a.m. till about lunch. You go on, but I'm doing all the workouts with them. We're running, doing a base run. We're stopping. We're doing push-ups. We're doing sprints up hills. We're doing lunges, blah, 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 blah. And then the day kind of just gets more fun. And we talk about the mental toughness during these points, like about not giving up on this, becoming a team. This is where, because teams are built off the field and off the ice. They're not built there. You got to build that camaraderie outside of that. So what I always would tell coaches and stuff like that is like, what are you doing outside of, well, we're not. It was like, okay, well, that's why you don't have a team. Like you're not doing any team things to build that camaraderie other than inside the locker room. And how do you expect to have a culture inside of your locker room if you haven't established that culture outside of it? So it was about establishing that culture outside of it. And then I'm a huge fan of, and a lot of people aren't, captains. You should have leadership and structure amongst your kids. So I had captains at 8U. And it wasn't like because I thought little Billy was the, some standout superstar. No, it was to show they're a structure. And I expected those captains to uphold my standards. And when they're upholding my standards, then the rest of usually the kids in the team start falling in line. Okay, well, if they're doing that, then we should too. Right. And there was always a time where like anybody could be a captain. So it's not like, it's just being handed out. So, and some teams don't like that. But I think having that leadership amongst your peers is a huge asset to it. Like, to where on my 13U team, I'm like, if you guys have an issue, you need to be going to your captains. And then if they're not getting it done, then you can contact me. Right. And then I tell my captains, if you're having issues, contact me directly so we can talk about it. But then I try to give them the tools to then go back and maybe handle it themselves, because that's when you start really building trust within your locker room. And I think trust amongst your team. I only had 10 skaters and a goalie throughout the year on Bantam hockey, and we went 500 in a very strong division. So we shouldn't have done that at all. But I think it was because these kids fought for each other and the stuff they got to go through. And then, so going back to that military day, after we went through like the adversity side, we did kind of like a mental health talk side where it's like about having that warrior mindset of not giving up, not quitting on your teams, having that commitment level. And then from there, we went and they got to go do the water oar course on the lake. And then we come back, they have a snack, and then we play paintball for 3 hours. And at the end of the night, I cooked them a steak dinner. So it kind of all culminated to that, where at the end of the night, I didn't have to say anything. They're like, coach, can you go get us a football? Yep. Got them a football. They went out there and they played touch football while I was cooking steaks for them and just having a blast, just being boys. And that meant more than any win, loss, or anything like that, because then they started building that culture on their own and they started upholding that standard on their own. And that's, at the end of the day, you're building not hockey players, baseball players, football players. You're building young men and women. And I think if you start looking at it from that aspect of, where do you want the society to drive towards, and like, how do you want to push that? And I think that's why, in my opinion, like the hockey, lacrosse world and stuff like that, usually those are the successful people in life when they play those sports because they understand how to work with a team. They understand how to work in a culture, and their leaders are usually amongst their peers. Well, if you're establishing that right culture right away and you're not worried about the wins and losses, you're worrying about the development as a person as well as field and ice skills, that's when I think, start seeing the most success.
That's so cool. I wish more people had your philosophy. I think it's great.
So to that point, though, in terms of like in the days of participation trophies, Rick, how do you mean? Obviously, you're dealing with young kids, right? Do you get the buy-in from the parents as well, or do you ever have, every once in a while, have a little conversation there?
I hate participation trophy. I actually had a tournament where my kids,
figured you would.
We lost. We did not do well. And I shit you not, my team, I walked into the locker room. They know we got our asses handed to us. They were 9. They were 9 years old. And I walked in there and I gave it to them. And each one of them took it and threw it in the trash can on the way out. And they said, nope, we didn't earn it. That's when I knew I won.
Yeah.
And so the next day at practice, we had a fun practice. I was like, I don't care. You guys get it. And the thing that I hate about participation trophies, and the reason why I think it's killing youth sports and athletes, is because you didn't earn shit.
Yeah.
And so now we're teaching them that I could do whatever. This is where that self-entitlement bullcrap comes into play. And I think it's a huge problem. Yeah. And I think we can have a whole hour segment on that alone.
Yeah.
The participation. So it's like you have winners and losers. And in life, and the way I always explain it to them was just like, you have winners and losers. But I also tell them, in a loss, if you learn something from it and we can work on that and build forward, then you never lost. Right. You learned. So, but you have to understand in life, you're going to fail. And the only way you're going to get better is to fail in that. But see, here's the thing. Coaches got to make sure that's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. It's going to happen.
That's what's not shown, though. I think a lot of people don't think it's okay to fail, and that's created a number of issues. But you're spot on. I agree.
Now, you don't need to like it in terms of failing, right? But you'll never appreciate a win if you haven't experienced losing, right?
100%. Right. And I would always, and I've made mistakes on the bench. There was a time where I made a mistake on a bench call where it cost us a goal. And the next day in film, that was the first thing I brought up in the film, in our film review the next 2 days later. And I was like, this is where I messed up. You guys see, I still make mistakes. This goal is not on any one of you. This was my fault because I called an improper change at the wrong time. I didn't read the play properly and I failed you guys, right? And I just tell them, look, I make mistakes too. It's okay to make mistakes. So now I've learned something from that. Did you guys as well? And so, so now you're showing them like, listen, I still make mistakes. Like, I'm not perfect. So yeah.
So, what would you want, like, if you had a player of yours, like, years later, what do you want them to remember you for? Or, like, the one thing that, Coach Rick?
It's funny because I still have some players from, like, Mite Hockey that still call me and be like, hey, Coach, guess what I just did? I'm like, what? And they still call me Coach, which I think is awesome. And I'll be like, what's up, bud? And he'll be like, I just made this team, or I just did that. And that, for me, is awesome. But I think later on in life, if they can be like, hey, I get it. I get the hard work and why you wanted us to do certain things a certain way, because that is a part of what I put in my daily life now to help me be successful, then I did my job. And it's not like I'm looking back at it and be like, man, look at all these kids I just put into the NHL. That doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, that's great. And if that happens, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm going to be just as excited, but again, that's not what it's about. And I think you honestly will put more of those kids in those situations if they're calling you back and saying like, hey, I made it. And I think it was because of, some of the stuff that you taught me both on and off the ice. Then that's way more important to me than anything else.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we got a few more questions for you here. Eric, it's your turn.
All right. Let me pull these up. All right. So either true, false, or one word answers. Hardest part of training, one word.
Swimming.
All right. True or false? Fear never goes away.
True.
Okay. Night dives, preferred? Yes or no?
Yes.
Well, you already answered this one. Most important skill.
Man, these are tough. Mentality.
Yeah. True or false? Communication underwater is easy.
False.
Depth you were most comfortable at.
60.
Okay. True or false? You do it all over again.
True.
Think so. Hey, it's been great having you on here.
No, this was a blast.
You're an inspiration to a lot of people. I'm glad we have millions and millions of viewers, so I'm glad they're all going to hear your story, watch Rocky, and be motivated.
Did you notice on the last questions, Eric? Like, military, it's precise, one answer, boom, boom, boom. It's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. He thought some of those, I was like, oh shit, that's a good one. Like, and I'm like, really only one word? But all right.
Yeah, it's hard, but it's like, yeah, no, you came up with it. No, it's good. No, it's been great.
Yeah, but he's military, so he listened to the instructions. How many guests do we have? And I get, 20 whole sentence explaining it.
That's all good. No, it's been great, Rick. I second what Eric said, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing again your experience from obviously a military perspective, but also how that kind of like develops these youth athletes, etc. I think that's fantastic. I think we need a lot more of that.
No, Ronnie, Eric, thank you guys so much for that. This was incredible. This was a lot of fun. I would do this again in a heartbeat. Ronnie, thank you for reaching out. This was awesome. So I didn't know this is how it was gonna go, and but this was a blast. So I'd sit down and shoot the shit with you guys anytime.
All right, sounds good.
Hey.
We appreciate it.
We'll have whiskey also.
Ooh.
See ya.
All right, now I'm gonna have to make my way out to the West Coast.
There you
Speak my
go.
language.
We do have whiskey out here, no question. Yes. All right. See you guys.
Take care.